Viv and Riley, good to hear you guys. Nice to see you again. I mentioned that we met at this camp up in the Northwest. And maybe, Riley, you could just share a little bit about Peter McCracken and this thing called Fiddle Tunes.
Fiddle Tunes, yeah. It was Fiddle Tunes has been happening for almost 50 years. It was it brings together music from fiddle music, traditional fiddle music, which when you start thinking about it, there's traditional fiddle music in almost every culture. Or some kind of traditional music that plays on the bow and the string and all that. And so Peter, who's this amazing kind of magician of the whole thing, his name's Peter McCracken, he's been doing this job for a long time. He brings all of us together, and there's big parties. Nick actually was the life of the party at Fiddle Tunes, I'll have you know, when he was there. But there's big parties, there's dances, and there's just incredible music from the tradition bearers of all these different fiddle styles, of Cape Breton music, old-time music. You know.
How old were you when you first went there?
I think I was 1 year old. I didn't stay the whole time, though.
Yeah.
And I didn't play any fiddle.
But literally your entire childhood, you've been going to this thing.
Yeah, I grew up there. I grew up like running around, and then I started taking kids classes. And, you know, when I start thinking about the people who were there when I was a kid, it's really amazing. Like some of my favorite fiddle players, Clyde Davenport, so many others, and that I just was sort of around soaking it all in, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm trying to imagine what you missed out on, if that's your childhood. Like, did you go to, elementary school and people were talking about like cartoons and toys? Just like, what? I'm listening to Clyde Davenport. What are you talking about?
I mean, yeah, you saw early. Nick asked us earlier if we knew any pop songs, and I didn't. So that you had a good firsthand example that made your life harder.
Yeah, no, it's I think we're sort of extolling the virtues of growing up around music and playing an instrument and being a part of this scene, and I think it is incredibly healthy, particularly because you got to do it with your parents and be around elders and older people who were doing this thing that you actually thought was cool, instead of not just thinking that old people are not so cool. And Viv, you were a teenager when you joined the Onlys, right? Barely still?
Yes, yeah. I met Riley and the rest of the Onlys at Port Townsend at this camp when we were all 18 years old. We'd all just graduated high school, and it was the summer before we went off to college. And we met each other and stayed up all night playing tunes, and then went our separate ways. But I shortly joined the band after that, and we would tour during the summers and on breaks. And
yeah.
And
the Onlys are still around and still doing things.
Still kicking. In fact, we are, the four of us are the artistic directors now of that camp, Fiddle Tunes. And so it's a very full circle kind of experience.
The kids have taken over. Yeah.
Maybe just for 1 year, but at least they've let us in the gates.
And am I right that you kind of picked Durham just sort of slightly randomly? You just said, well, let's go there. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was slightly random. We were out in Portland, Oregon. I was finishing school there, and I grew up in Lexington, Virginia, and I wanted to come back east because I do love living in the Southeast, but wanted to try something new. And we knew there was a great old-time scene in Durham, but also that there's really great bands writing a lot of music, new music there. So it seemed like a good place to try, and so far it's been good.
How long did it take for you to sort of feel like it was, this is our spot?
I don't know. I think just kind of it was making this record, really, which is a funny thing. We made a record with our good friend Alex Bingham, who plays in a band called His Golden Messenger. And Al is just a wonderful person and musician, and he made us feel so welcome, and I think he's kind of has his hands in all these different projects in Durham and in the local music scene, and he introduced us to folks, and it got us to feel comfortable there, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's, again, what we're talking about is essentially communities, and whether it's the community of inmates dancing with Lucy's help, or the community that Sam grew up in playing music around that, the music and the rhythm and the pulse and the ability to have that shared experience is so beautiful. And I know that not everybody gets to do that, but if you haven't picked up an instrument, it's not too late. There are people right where you live who would play music with you, and you can have that experience too. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth exploring. But these guys have been at it their whole lives. And Viv, I just want to ask you briefly about your songwriting heroes, because you're a really good songwriter, and I don't know if there's anyone in particular that's sort of like your true north, or if there's a few of them, but who have you been listening to?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question, and I also find it to be a hard question because there are so many people writing great songs, and definitely my influences change over time. But certainly, growing up, I think I was, like you were saying, I was lucky to grow up around a lot of music, and my parents are both great musicians, and they played old time music, but they also played in a duo together and wrote music that I think really beautifully kind of crossed genres, They have certainly been an influence indirectly or directly in my own music making. And then, there's just countless other people.
That's cool. That's
get
cool.
into.
Well, I love the fact that it all sifts in. And, it's all very tangible. Like, I knew that my dad went out of the house in the dark and got on a train and went to do something, but I never knew really what it was when I was a kid. So it's cool that you got to see your parents do this thing. It was very real and tangible. Well, listen, we're going to get back to music. Glad you're here. Welcome back, if you would, Viv and Riley.